This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
Welcome to today's Talk Business and Politics. I'm Roby Brock, joined by John Brummett of the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Good to see you.
Well, it's good to be
Monday
here.
Monday there. Nice to see you, sir. You are going to escape having to do the club dub dance. Remember last week you said you were going to dance when the Hogs next won, and then you tried to backtrack and crawfish and say SEC victory, but I think you may escape this entire football season from having to do a dance.
Let me tell you, there's a good chance I will escape that offer this entire season. But I'm not going to dance either way.
What?
I'll just say that I lied. I'm just going to Clintonize or Trumpize, because I'm not going to get back here and do one of those dances. I'm simply not. I know that.
I'm just going to put
them
side by side.
But I'm going to gaslight it. I'm going to gaslight it like Trump. I'm simply going to repeatedly say I did not say that. And you can put up what I said, but I'm going to deny it. That's the way you deal with truth in the Trump era, don't you know? I'm off to an anti-Trump start today.
You really are. Yeah. So why don't we start with Trump?
Oh, let's do.
Let's start with this whole supposed debate, discussion, controversy over Joe Biden's son, Joe Biden, Ukraine, Trump, asking the government of Ukraine to investigate, withholding money. Peel all of the air. Pull all of the layers of the onion back. Is this even a scandal?
Possibly a big one. First of all, it comes down to Joe Biden's son went to work for a natural gas company in Ukraine. It came under some sort of investigation that amounted to nothing. Hunter Biden was on the board of it. Joe Biden is at some, I'll tell this as quickly as I can. Joe Biden is at some foreign relations seminar, and you know what Joe Biden's big problem is? Blowing smoke, talking big, talking too much, saying indelicate things. He said, well, when I'm walking out with the Ukraine president, I told him, you want this money, you fire that prosecutor. Well, and then the guy said, well, you're not the president. And he said, I told him, somebody says, and then I told him, you know, they're usually full of it, I told him to call President Obama, and he'd see that it was. And guess what? He was fired. Well, this is what Trump is saying the Ukrainians ought to investigate. Now, it has been investigated. It has been fact-checked by every credible fact-checked organization in American media, which means the right wing doesn't believe it, that this really doesn't amount to that much other than Joe Biden. I mean, Hunter Biden taking a directorship I wouldn't have taken, and Joe Biden speaking with typical Joe Biden blowing smoke, being full of it. At a conference.
So is the scandal on the Trump side of this?
Well, the only possible, see, even if Joe misbehaved and spoke poorly, that does not excuse what the president is accused of doing. Now, here is what it is suggested that he is doing. Sitting in the Oval Office as the President of the United States with some sum of military aid to Ukraine pending and having been slow-walked. They couldn't get it. He gets on the phone and tells the new president, this is what's alleged, well, you all need to investigate Joe Biden over this thing, which had been previously investigated. You need to get to the bottom of that. So that much would mean that the President of the United States asked a foreign country to help him in domestic politics, leveraging it with either by implication or explicitly our taxpayer money. To interfere and do opposition research or damage on a potential political opponent. That, to me, would be an outright scandal. Now, this has fueled all new sorts of impeachment talk. First, because, and this has all been brought to light by a whistleblower operating under the whistleblower law, and the Inspector General has determined it's credible enough to investigate. The law plainly says when that's the case, the whistleblower report needs to go to Congress. They're withholding it. That would be the first basis that's what Nancy Pelosi is talking about. If you're not going to abide by the law by Thursday, we're going to have to step up what we're doing, ratchet this thing up. So that's the first reason. Then if he turns it over, then the question becomes, did he just speak with typical Trump nonsense and inappropriateness? Or is there a specific, what's in here? Is this a specific quid pro quo? You want this taxpayer money, which is not his to leverage for his political purposes? Then you got to do me a political favor. That's some sort of extortion. That ought to bring a man, that ought to lead to impeachment. But we don't know. Right now, the question is, Mr. President, you keep saying this was a perfectly fine conversation. Well, let us see what the whistleblower said for that reason, and also because it's the law. So that's where we are. I think this is potentially bigger than anything in the Mueller report.
Yeah.
I really do.
How do you think it plays out?
Gosh, I don't know.
That's why we bring you on this program.
The short-term question.
Explain these
The
things to
short-term
us.
question for us to know by the end of this week is, will the White House, will the Trump administration make this report available to Congress in some form? Or if he doesn't, will Nancy Pelosi proceed, as she said, and we're going to ratchet this up? Because you're violating that much. Regardless of what you said to him, the fact that you won't give this to us violates the law. I tend to think, in the short term, they can finesse that one. Give it to some. But I don't know. But this is Biden being full of it, and Trump being accused of typical Trump behavior without propriety or integrity, and making an entire foreign policy issue entirely about his own political interest. That's what is here. One does not excuse the other. Biden's has been investigated. Joe Biden should not be the Democratic nominee for president because he talks ridiculously, in my opinion. That's what we have on his side. On the other side, we have this whole Trump. See, under constitutional law, the only way the U.S. Constitution works is if our people in positions of power will abide by it, you know, and you got to abide by the law. If you have a president who's not going to, this is potentially a big one right now.
Yeah. All right, we'll watch.
Sorry to ramble, but there's a lot of elements to that.
It's good. It's good. So let's move from a national, international controversy to a very local controversy that has some statewide implications. Let's talk about what happened on Friday afternoon with the Little Rock School District, the State Board of Education. They basically laid out a plan to give back some control of the Little Rock School District, but with a lot of restrictions on that. Hastily done, full of controversy. Why do you think it played out the way that it played out? This seems like stumbling politics to me in the way that it was portrayed.
I have a column for tomorrow that says the State Board of Education seems hell-bent on making another fine mess of the Little Rock schools. I may have to rewrite that momentarily because as we record, Governor Hutchinson, who may be behind all this or troubled by some of it, we don't know, is having a press availability in a few minutes. If my answers could be shorter, which they cannot be, I might make it to that. But it played out, it's distrust. And it's simple, it's distrust and it's clumsiness on the part of the state, growing out of a basic difference in philosophy about how to proceed with public education in Little Rock. First of all, they call a meeting and don't say it's about Little Rock. The acting superintendent, Michael Poore, answers some local press questions and says, yeah, I believe it's going to be about Little Rock. Then they produce a framework for how they're going to proceed, which is to give it back to the local district with new school board districts. But to the failing schools, the F-grade schools, they get treated separately, which means
different leadership,
different management, using some local resources. Looks like the state is reserving the right to make them charter schools or something. It also takes the schools that are doing poorly, which are in the neighborhoods which are culturally deprived, which are poor, which are Latino, which are black, makes them, it literally segregates them from the rest of the Little Rock schools. You have the State Board of Education saying, here we go, 1957, yeah, well, let's resegregate in a way. That's what how a lot of people see that. And then, as if that wasn't bad enough. And so they did this. They apparently violated the FOI to arrive at that framework in a series of individual meetings based on a Fort Smith case, a city director's case over there. So you've got that. And now I've lost my train of thought. I was so into it.
At the very end of the meeting, they spring the
nitroglycerin.
The nitroglycerin, as you
Sarah
described
Moore, a member of the State Board, formerly education aide on Governor Hudson's staff, just hauls off toward the end of the meeting and moves to decertify the Classroom Teachers Union in Little Rock.
It represents about 70% of the teachers.
Clark Tucker, who'll soon, I assume, be in the state Senate, who's running and is likely to win. He gets up and he says, we're not going to have school Monday if you do this. And this, to blindside us with this on top of this other thing, and they decide that it looked to me like the board kind of wanted to be for it, but didn't want to be for it under those circumstances, that it had been done as a blindside attack. And it's on the agenda one way or the other in October, which has the State Board of Education in the position of saying, we're going to give you back your schools next year, but we're going to blow up your teachers union and make all your teachers mad and maybe burden you with a teacher strike. Meantime, we're going to keep and run some other way your schools aren't doing poorly, and they happen to be the minority neighborhoods, and we're going to separate your city further that way and keep it separated that way. Another fine mess, bigger than most of the fine messes we've encountered from 57 onward in this district. That's why, momentarily, what the governor says about this is kind of important. Because I accuse him of micromanaging state government, which would mean he was behind this. We will see. I mean, I'm sorry that I wish we...
You wish we could tape a little later.
I wish he'd just call in, but he won't. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Lastly, do you think we will have a special session on vaping before the end of this year?
No, that's a tough question. These other things have been easy. No, see, you would think, yes. The Senate leadership, conservative Republican leadership, wants to tax the vaping industry, does it just as it taxes the cigarette, the tobacco industry, and it wants to regulate vaping just as it regulates tobacco, and it wants to stop this marketing to children of a product that has been targeted toward them at an early age, getting them addicted to nicotine, and has now got all new sorts of health issues associated with it. And Walmart has pulled the product entirely. It appears to me that the sentiment would be there to pass such legislation. I hesitate because in a one-issue special session, when the industry has good lobbyists already and then can hire some of these good hired guns as special lobbyists for that, do not underestimate the power of the very resourceful, crafty lobbyists, veteran lobbyists at the state legislature. And that's the only reason I hesitate. It ought to get done, and I would think it would get done. I would think.
I don't think that the consensus is there, and I don't think it can be built before the end of the year. I think it'll be next year before we even know from the crystal ball if it can be done. I'm not convinced that it can.
You probably, you keep a closer watch these days on these boards than I do, because I stay depressed about them. But you know, I've talked to Jim Hendren, I've talked to Missy Irvin. They have perfectly good conservative credentials, or they used to, or still do. Yeah. And he's the president pro tem, and she's the public health chairman. So
I don't think that means that the rest of the membership's going to follow.
That might influence the Senate leadership. Then you got to go down the hall where it's an entirely different culture. So you may be right, but I hope they can, but I don't know if they can, and I defer to your inside expertise there.
I've left you enough time to get over to the governor's.
Let's go see what he's going to do. All right.
John Brummett with the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. Thanks. Thank you for tuning in. That's all for today's program. I'm Roby Brock. We'll see you next time.
You'll find us at the end of a lot of long country roads, covering over 60% of the great state of Arkansas. Our 17 electric distribution cooperatives are working day and night to provide reliable, affordable power to over 500,000 homes, farms, and businesses, just like yours. The Electric Cooperatives of Arkansas, your local energy partners.
Each day, the promise of our nation begins again. Arkansas and America, moving forward. I help make that promise a reality. It's not for everyone, but people everywhere depend on us.
Oh, I love you too, sweetie.
Trucking delivers, or everything stops. And that's what drives me.